welcome to our latest episode of Team Lead Talks. I'm your host, Andrew Becker, out of Washington, D.C. Today, we have a very special guest who has built an amazing team in Alabama and across other states as well, Phil Duke of First Class Realty. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know we been trying to get this on the calendar for quite some time, so I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I think a lot of people can learn from one of the best out there. You've grown a very, very, very large business, so I'm looking forward to hearing how that happened. So let's start, Phil, with can you kind of just describe what got you into real estate just really briefly, and then I really just want to jump into how you built your incredible team.
Yeah, man. So I got into real estate probably like a lot of people. I was just looking for a way to get kind of unstuck. I was kind of a broke college student, and I took a real estate elective as one of my business electives at the community college I was going to. And so I got credit for it. And at the end of it, I could take the state exam. And so I did. And I jumped in it, thinking it was going to be easy money like most people do. And
like TV shows show you that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had never been in a sales job before that. I'd always just done, like I'd had a landscaping, a little service, that me and my friend did. I worked at a lawyer's office as just like a clerk or a runner, just going back and forth to the courthouse and stuff. So I really struggled, when I got in the real estate business because I didn't have any sales skills. And I really was kind of looking for like easy, quick ways to find deals. And that didn't really work very well. So I ended up flunking out of the business in about 2 years, about 2.5 years. I was
agent at this point.
Let's see. At this point, today it's been like 9 or 10 years, I guess, at this point. But I was in it for like 2.5 years. From 06 to 08. So also kind of a weird time to
good time to get into real estate, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I had that going for me too. And I thought, hey, I'm just going to get out. I'm glad I tried this, but I need to go back to college. I need to finish my degree. And so I joined the military at that time and ended up, going back to school, finishing my degree. And after working in pest control sales of all things, I was a pest control salesman. Which was a really good job, by the way. People, kind of hate on the pest control industry, but it was great for me. I found myself wanting to kind of be self-employed again. And from having some sales experience in a different industry, I felt like I kind of figured out what worked for me, what didn't work for me as far as, just asking questions and setting appointments and being able to close on low dollar. I mean, pest control, like $30, $40 a month.
Right.
I think what most pest control services probably are these days. But just getting that confidence and getting those reps in, I got back into the industry and at that point, I knew what it was going to take. I knew like lead generation was a huge part of the business. And I kind of ran away from that the first go around. But the second go around, I was like, if this is what it's going to take, then I'm just going to become a freak of nature at generating leads. And if you can generate leads and set appointments and close those appointments, that skill that you develop as an agent early on will continue to help you when you go to build your team, when you go to build a brokerage, when you go to multiple locations. It's literally like recruiting and setting up new businesses and other locations. It's all just lead generation. So I think the one thing I finally got right the second go around was I was committed to learning how to lead generate.
Yeah.
And that's continued to help me, throughout all these years.
Yeah. I mean, you can't close anything if you don't have anything to close. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially now in what we're seeing with like interest rates and super low inventories up in our area and across the nation. But lead gen is critical, right? And I think how most people kind of fall into, and I've been there too early on, you get like a handful of leads and you're working a few deals and then you forget about the lead gen and then those deals close and you're like, shoot, what does my pipeline look like? And it's literally no pipeline. So that's a critical part. So let's talk about lead gen though. So you tried for a year or two, didn't really work out. You weren't self-admittedly not generating any leads, right? So that makes it incredibly tough, not to mention the time frame you chose. But then you came back later. How did you solve this lead gen out of nowhere? Can you talk about what those sources were?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I felt like from being in the industry previously, I'd been exposed to like the Mike Ferry organization. I knew there were coaches out there. I knew there were scripts and like listing presentation formats that were already figured out. And so in the beginning, I was just like, you know what? Other people have come before me and have made a lot of money just
Right.
using this stuff.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, it was just like, I'm just going to stick to what those people have already proven works. So in the beginning, it was like, 2 to 3 hours every single morning in the office, door closed, nobody bothering me. And I'm just in there, just on the phone, calling for sell by owners, expired listings, my friends and family, sphere of influence, circle prospecting around neighborhoods where I'd had sales or where I'd taken listings. And really, like, that just became part of my normal routine. Like, I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I wanted to be successful, and I felt like instead of me trying to reinvent the wheel, why don't I just actually commit to doing what people have proven works? So, it just became part of my daily routine. Like, wake up early, go to the gym, take a shower, head to the office, first person there every single day, and like 2 to 3 hours of lead gen before the next agent even rolled into the office that morning.
Awesome.
And just kind of like it, it kind of sucks having to be on the phone like that and cold calling, and there's other ways to generate leads now. But in the beginning, when you don't have any money and you've already got a cell phone, like that's an easy way to generate business. And so I started doing that until I got to the point where I had enough closings and I had enough revenue coming in to where I could then start, doing some YouTube videos and Facebook video ads and kind of starting to automate that a little bit. But I kind of had to create a little bit of a name for myself in the beginning before I think any of those ads and videos and that kind of stuff worked. So it was really stinking simple. It was just close the door, make a bunch of phone calls, set a bunch of appointments Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and
Yeah.
then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was kind of the days to go out and actually go on those appointments. And then you had to learn what to say on those appointments. You had to learn what to do once you got people to sign a contract with you, and really just systemizing that, because you nailed it. Like, you know, you get 4 or 5 closings in 1 month and you've spent all your time babysitting those 4 or 5, and then you don't have any new ones behind that. Well, now you're basically starting over again, over and over and over. So, as you kind of get busier, I think for me at least, it was how do I continue to stay this busy and have this many closings while also making sure that next month and the next month
Yeah.
doesn't end up being a zero on the board too.
Yeah, it's tough starting over from zero each month, but there's two really important pieces of what you just said that I kind of want to highlight. Number one, you didn't want to reinvent the wheel the second go around, right? So there are coaches that have been in this business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But you don't have to start with the coach. If it's too expensive, you can start with a mentor or join a team that's already being successful and learn from them. So those are kind of two avenues you can go down. The other thing that I absolutely love is like consistency, 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 and you getting up every single freaking day. Probably most days when you didn't really want to, and you pounded the phones for 2 to 3 hours. And I love that when when the boss does, as you're growing and you're leveraging other people eventually, you've kind of been there, done that. So you're not just hiring and hoping that they work out. You're like, I've done this before. Here's how to do it. As well as like your coaching scripts and all that great stuff. But that's where your true like experience can come into play here as you grow team members, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's a lot of people, and I've even, coached some that they wanna get out of producing, they want to get out of that side of it, so they decide to start a team or they want to start a brokerage to get out of that. And I've seen some of those succeed, but the more successful ones I've seen have been where, one person and an admin, like a part-time assistant or something, they had so much business they couldn't handle it all, and they started a team out of necessity.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you start a team out of necessity, which is where I got to later, I literally had people want me to come list their house or put up a sign, and it would be 4 or 5 days before I even had an opening on the calendar. And I was
yeah,
like, man, I'm losing business by being so busy. And
yeah.
so I would just say to anybody out there, like, if you're struggling on the lead gen side, you're struggling with consistency day to day, week to week, if you start a team and you're struggling with consistency and now you're leading other people, it's going to escalate way, way, way faster. So to me, I felt like that was something that helped me in the beginning. I maybe waited too long to do it, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
but I started a team in the beginning just simply out of necessity. I had so many leads, and I got to a point where I was generating a listing appointment for every 27 phone calls I made.
That's awesome.
Which is like crazy. Yeah, like it was a
Yeah.
crazy good ratio, but it created a problem because I had more appointments than I could
But a
physically
good problem to have,
a good
right?
problem to have, right? And so I would just say out like there's a lot of people looking for like passive income, and listen, I'm right there with you on that too.
Hmm.
But I think if you build a team out of necessity, you have a much much higher percentage of actually making it as a team. I've seen a lot of people go the team route, and then after a year or two, they say, you know what, this really wasn't worth it. I
Right.
feel like I'm just babysitting my agents on my team, and so they end up they don't get out of the business, but they go back to being a solo agent again. And they really didn't have enough business to really need to start a team. They just kind of did it because they wanted to.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, when we were recruiting, it was out of, okay, I started our team with my partner, my business partner, Dan, and it was like kind of like similar track to you, honestly. We would we did direct mail. We didn't do a whole lot of cold calling ourselves, but we did direct mail and like open houses and things like that. But our schedules would get filled, and then we couldn't be on the phone. Our first hire, and I'm curious to know what yours would was when you had it come up, who you hired first. But ours was like, man, we're gonna be selling with the intention to ultimately leverage other agents to sell for us so we could work on the business and grow and scale, but we hired an ISA or an inside sales agent, appointment setter, however you want to label it. So he was just at the office pounding the phones while we were going on the appointments. And then when we weren't able to go on the appointments, and we were really good at lead gen, kind of like you, and setting appointments, we almost tapped out at the amount of appointments we could physically handle and sign up, and it kind of snowballs. So I'm curious, can you walk us through your first few hires and how you handle that and where they came from?
Yeah, and I would not do this again the same way if I had to do it all over again. But I hired an unlicensed assistant who was simply helping me with listing coordination. So she would call the photographer, get copies of the keys made, go pick up a lockbox and put it on the house, go put out the sign, upload the pictures to the MLS. She would do those kind of things because I literally had people wanting to list their house, and it's like, man, I can remember like at times like coming home having dinner, and like me and my wife and my one boy at the time, I got two boys now. We would literally get in the car and like, hey, let's go ride around town while Dad puts out real estate signs in the dark.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's just like, I started getting to the point where I had a little bit of money, and it was like, is this really the way I want life to look?
right.
And so that first hire was really more of an administrative type role. So it took all that off my plate, which just allowed me to spend more time doing my money making activities. And she did like closing coordination type stuff for me too. All the waivers, all the addendums, the has the appraisal been ordered, all that kind of stuff. So that when I would give those weekly updates to those clients every Tuesday, I could literally just look at our board that we had set up and be like, hey, we're waiting on the appraisal, or all that kind of stuff. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have hired a licensed assistant who could have also shown some houses here or there.
Okay, yeah,
Have some friends out in Arizona that run a showing assistant model where they get the buyer pre-approved, they do a buyer consultation, they get the buyer brokerage agreement signed, and then they pass those off to agents on their team who handle all the showings, and then they hop back on to do the offers and the negotiations. So I was a little bit scared in the beginning about hiring a licensed assistant because I thought like once they figure out what I'm doing, they're gonna go out and just rip
yeah,
off what I'm doing because
yeah.
it was really stinking simple. It was like 2 to 3 hours, several days a week of being on the phone. Here's my contract to close system. Here's what I do to take listings, and that was really just irrational fear at that point. And so I did end up my second hire was a licensed assistant who could still do the listing input, who could still do the contract to close, but who could also start showing houses. And I did eventually start hiring more agents in the beginning specifically to work with buyers. I was like, buyers are taking up a lot of my time. They say they're going to be there at 10 a.m. They roll in at 10:40. And I've been there for 50 minutes because I got there early and turned the lights on. So I just transitioned to where really all I focused on was generating the buyers, passing them off to them, and then I just continued to handle the listing. So it was really more like, what is the highest and best use for my time, and then who could I bring on to take some of this other stuff that's still making me money, but it's not as efficient as other stuff I could be working on. And that has helped through this whole process, like starting the team, starting the brokerage. Yeah, it's always just been, what is the highest and best use of my time, and then who do I need to hire to take this other stuff off my plate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you kind of start and you're building brick by brick, figuring out who the next team hire is going to be. I remember too, you mentioned like, this is how I want my life to look like, putting up signs. We did that too at like we would do bandit signs. I'm not sure if you've ever done that
Yeah.
before. 4 or 5 a.m. putting up bandit signs. I'm like, how did this wind up happening? And then like
Yeah. Yeah.
answering the phone constantly, and it was tough. And then I remember like the day we got our first ISA and transferred, we used CallRail for like our marketing numbers and set up flows to go to Peter. The day I was like, I'm not on these numbers anymore. It was like liberating, right? And then he got work and he was busy, and he felt like he was part of the team. So it was like the moment I felt like we made it as a team was when you start to pass off some of these lower level hanging fruit things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many people get in the industry to have that freedom, and and the money too. The money can be really good, but I see a lot of people just chasing the money, and it seems like they never stop and think about, like, yeah, the money is good, but is this really what I want life to look like? Like, I couldn't imagine, still doing open houses 10 years from now,
Right.
uh, still
Yeah.
going over home inspection reports. And so, but some people really love that, and that's their thing, and they love to do it. I'm just not one of those people. And so we're fortunate enough to be in an industry where there are all kind of paths that you can take. And really, for me, it was like getting clarity about, like, what do I want my life to really look like? What do I want my role to be? And what do I not want it to be? Like, what do I not like doing? If I
Right.
could hire it out, what's something I could hire somebody to do and never have to touch it ever again? And we're very fortunate to be in an industry where you can take a bunch of different paths. But I think having that clarity about what you want is extremely important. And sometimes I did things thinking it would help me out, and ended up, making me even more stuck than I was before, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
we all kind of learned from that a little bit too. But yeah, I mean, real estate has been a total game changer for my life, and I was fortunate early on to have those kind of moments, like, hey, time out now. Like, is this really worth the money?
Right.
And how could I reverse engineer this knowing what I know now?
Yeah. There's a big concept that I got into called like, this is kind of what you're talking about, but like the who not how approach,
Hmm.
especially if you don't like doing it, like a home inspection report, going over it, they're gonna tell if you don't like that, right? Like the person on the other end. So find someone. There's people out there that want to do it, that love to do it, that will probably do it better than you and me, right? So that was like a big like aha moment. It's like, I be doing this? Number one, is there someone else out there that would want to do this more than I can and is more economical and it makes sense? You plug them in, you've been doing it before. So we're also big on playbooks or standard operating procedures. So you plug them into this already working system, and you want to hold them accountable and track their performance and production and things like that. But that's kind of how we built our team. I'd love to hear about. So before we got on the call, you were telling me you have 160 plus people on the team. We just heard kind of how you got started with your first few, but that is a massive jump, and that's an impressive jump. That's like a qualifies as a mega team, I believe, right? So can you talk about how you went from your first couple and how long it took you to do that, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff in between that I'd like to chat about as well.
Yeah. So, I started getting, as a solo agent, I started getting to the point where, agents in the office was kind of like knock on the door and be like, hey, man, you got like 5 minutes for me? And that would turn into 30 or 45 minutes of me like coaching this person. And I like people had helped me along the way. You know, some of them were coaches I paid for, some of them were just mentors I had along the way. And so I felt like that was probably going to be my next move was at some point I either need to be coaching or I mean really when if you're a team leader or you're a broker owner, you're really a coach. I mean like it's really one of the number one things that you do. And so I ended up starting a brokerage and really just wanted to keep it real small, you know, like most people want to do in the beginning. Only wanted people that were super duper committed but I kind of took whoever came my way. I really was not intentional about recruiting. I wasn't really trying to grow it in those early days, but I had people that I had done deals with, like other agents from other companies that I had done deals with, and they liked the way I operated. You know, like I can remember one guy, he was like new in the business, doing it part time, and there was like a big repair on a deal that me and him were doing together. And I was like, listen, man, I'm gonna tell you, you know, I feel like God has been blessing me here lately with my business. I want to bless you. I think you're going to be a great agent, your career. So I'm just going to pay the $1,200 out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And he remembered that. And so when I started my brokerage, like he called me like, hey man, like I'm not real happy where I'm at. Could I come work for you? And so I kind of grew really, really slow for like the first 2 years. And I really felt like I was failing because I had like 10 agents and really only like three or four were really doing anything. The others were kind of like part timers or you know brand new to the industry and weren't doing very much. And I really was thinking about closing it down because I was like, you know, I set out to have a bunch of people or a small group of people that were all crushing it. And
Yeah.
now I've kind of got a lot of people, like 10 felt like a lot at that point, which is kind of laughable now. But 10 felt like a lot. And I was like, I can't even get these 10 people to all be crushing it.
Right.
But I realized from a mentor that I was actually doing pretty good. Three out of 10 in the real estate business, if you can bring 10 people on and three of them are doing really good, you're actually doing really, really good. And I felt like I was failing, but I was measuring my business by the wrong metric. You know, it wasn't what percentage of my people are crushing it versus not crushing it. You know, it was, I really just needed to change it. Like I had three people that were crushing it. So my coaching was working, my onboarding system was working. And that's when I just realized like I need to step away from working with buyers and sellers and also kind of working with agents.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple good agents already. I already wasn't working with buyers at that point. Why don't I just give my listings away to those three that I had that were doing really, really good? And then I'm going to spend all my time coaching, training, and recruiting.
Cool. Okay.
And so that's when I realized and recruiting agents is just lead generation, right? You're gonna do an activity to generate a lead.
Yep.
You're gonna generate a lead to follow up with that lead. You're gonna follow up with that lead to set an appointment. You're gonna set an appointment to hopefully actually do that appointment. And then when you go on that appointment, you got to know what to say to get them to move forward with you. And then when they sign with you, you got to know what to do after they sign the dotted line. So when I looked at it that way for the first time, I realized like, yeah, like I've been crushing it generating leads with buyers and sellers. I just need to take that same approach and go out there and start recruiting agents.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, that's what I did. I mean, knowing what I know now, there are people out there that have figured that out and have, you know, kind of put that into scripts and dialogues. But I didn't know who those people were in those days, so I kind of just winged it for a little bit and figured out what worked for me. To the point that we eventually got to 40 plus agents, and then I was able to bring a recruiter in and
Nice.
hey, here's your recruiting playbook. This is what works for me. This is how I built it from 10 to 40. I need you to take it from 40 to 80,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of how it went. So I went from recruiting buyers and sellers to recruiting agents to then recruiting a recruiter.
Yeah.
And it was just more of that philosophy of spending my time on what was the highest and best use. So I could go out and sell a house and make 5 or 10,000 bucks, or I could bring a good agent in and I might make 40 or 50,000 bucks this year and then make it again next year and then make it again next year. And so that was the highest, best use of my time at that point until I got to the point where once I had really, blown that up, that one office up and made it big, I realized I could actually fast track this whole thing. And instead of recruiting a recruiter, I could just recruit somebody to run an office and teach them how to manage a recruiter.
Yeah.
And so that's
So you
kind of how
stepped
it
it
started
up
going as
every
fast.
single time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, man, I could start 3 offices at one time,
Yeah.
and I could literally just be coaching and training my leadership team, and they're managing, their recruiter, and their recruiter is probably helping with training agents a little bit. So once I figured out, like, I kind of, and I don't say master,
Hmm.
I did it good enough to move on. That's an acronym we use in our company, GETMO, good enough to move on. I had learned how to recruit good enough to pass it off to somebody else. I
Yeah.
had learned how to manage an office good enough to pass it off to a manager. And then it got to the point where I just started recruiting people to come in and open up more offices and giving them all the lessons learned along the way. So they were getting a cheat code that I didn't have by plugging in with me and just getting on, weekly Zoom calls with me. And really, I was still a coach at that point, right? I mean, I was coaching the leaders who were coaching the agents who were coaching the recruiters. And that's kind of how, the book came out, and that's how the coaching program came from. That was because I realized, like, this works pretty much anywhere. Any city we've gone to, that same system, basically works.
Yeah.
So yes, it's really, really exciting how fast it can go. To your point, like when you remove yourself from the day to day of the work, it's crazy how much faster things can go.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a time management thing, right? Like if you're going to be selling homes or showing buyers at that stage, there's almost no time to do what you just described that you did. I'm curious, how many like flash way, way forward to like today? Can you talk to us about how you mentioned like multiple states, tons of agents? What's your current landscape look like?
Yeah. So today we've got 10 locations across 6 different states. Three of them are here where I started in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and all of those were people that were with us in that original location that they ended up, moving on to be a team leader, and then their team got big enough that they said, "Hey, I want to own my own office." So we set up and did a play with them that way.
Cool.
And some of those I talk to monthly. Like they just don't need as much help anymore because they've kind of gotten started, and now the monthly call is like, "Hey, what are you working on? Like, what other opportunities are you seeing?" And it's more of a mastermind call than like a mentor, mentoring, somebody underneath them. And then some of them, like we opened up 2 in 2023, so those are still fairly new and are needing a little bit more coaching and support and growing to that point. And those leaders haven't quite got to the point where they're out of production. They're kind of doing production for part of the week and recruiting and building up the agent count for part of the week. But yeah, I mean they all run without me. I'm not on the lease on any of them. I'm not on the payroll. I don't literally nothing comes to me for approval. I see the numbers every month, and then I coach based on the numbers. And it's a fairly hands off business for me at that point, which has allowed me to either do more of that,
Hmm.
or what I've done is kind of start developing some other similar business models in other industries.
Cool.
And that's kind of been where I've been spending more of my time right now, because those same principles apply to any organ, like dentists. There's a bunch of I was coaching with some dentists a couple weeks ago in Nashville. They're trying to figure out how do they grow their dental practice to the point that they don't have to be in the chair working on people's teeth all day every day to make a living.
Yeah.
So that those same principles apply to every business that's out there is a sales organization. They might not see themselves that way, but if they had enough sales coming in, the owner would be able to no longer be in the dental chair, out on the
Right.
showings, out on the listing appointments, looking at the home inspection report that just came out, and your person's freaking out on the other end of the line. So when you really look at it that way, that same principle applies to virtually every industry that's out there, and that's kind of what I'm doing more of these days, is coaching and training people, in other industries
Yeah.
who
That's
want to kind
awesome.
of do the same thing. The same principles apply.
Cool. That's great. I mean, yeah, and it's true. Like sales is sales, recruiting is recruiting. Just what space are you going to be in, and how you implement your system comes into play regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is, right? I mean, if you had, I mean, I think the goal of every entrepreneur should be to not have a job. And what I mean by that is that nothing has to be done by you for the business to still run. And that takes, like, it takes trust, it takes time, it takes, I mean, I made so many mistakes along the way. It's a miracle that we even made it to where we did today, to be honest with you. But if that's your end goal, there are roadmaps out there that you can follow to try to get there. And if you had enough money coming into your organization, you could probably take some of that money and invest it in a manager or a recruiter or a salesperson, and then you would be one step closer to being totally removed from any of the day to day. And I think there's a lot of people out there that excel in that visionary role, in that founder role, but unfortunately they're so bogged down by being the founder, the visionary, and having to run checks to the bank and having to look over their P&L, and they wear too many hats that they never really get to that level 10 role that they could be in. They're a level 10 person playing at level 4 because they have so many different responsibilities. So I
Exactly.
think that's a big takeaway too, is if you can get to that point where this thing is running with or without you, and you can still guide it, you can still have a vision for it, you can still have influence on it, but it needs to be at a point where it's running without you. That was my ultimate goal. And, real estate was able to give that to me. So I'm extremely thankful for the ride that we've had so far. And hopefully this is
Cool.
just the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of other awesome initiatives. We'll probably stick to the real estate piece since this is a real estate podcast, but that's really awesome. You're starting to move into other spaces. Congrats on that success. It's pretty cool. So let's go back just a little bit. You mentioned like when you're trying to get buyer seller leads for real estate, you do something, right? You lead gen, you call, you hold an event. What was that event for recruiting? Because I know a lot of people are struggling with recruiting and finding people. Number one, what did you've been doing this for quite some time. So I'd love to hear like this is the number one or two things we did to bring people on. And then number two, there's all this competition out there, right? The big brokerages, the boutique brokerages, the brokerages that are, I mean, there are thousands of different private brokerages, right? So there's all this competition out there. So what made you so successful to be able to not only get them in the room, but then say, here's why you want to join us,
Yeah, a great question, and that could be a whole other podcast too. So I'll
right?
try to be brief with it. But I mean, to me, I believe that agents move from one company to another or one team to another when they found a leader that can get them to the next level faster and easier than the current leader they're working for. So you see a lot of agents joining a company, a brokerage, a team because they feel like that team is going to help them get to whatever their level is, and they probably can, to be honest with you. Um, but I also noticed that a lot of the coaching and training that was being offered at the big brokerage level was somewhat outdated, and a lot of the people giving those trainings were people that had never really had success in this market. When I say that, I'm talking like within the last 5 to 10 years or so. Somebody that had success in the 70s or the 80s. They had technology systems that worked great. I mean, there's a bunch of good CRMs out there, and they would try to sell that as a benefit if they were trying to recruit you. But what I found was that very few of the broker owners and team leaders in my area actually really knew how to use their CRM.
Gotcha.
So they're saying, "Hey, you need to join our team because we have this," but they couldn't really even show you how it really worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hop on the chat; they'll help you with it. So, the thing that I learned from a lot of others in the industry as well is if you start coaching your competition's agents better than they are, they will naturally start coming to you. So a couple things have to happen for I think that to be a successful way of recruiting. Number one, the people that you want have to know that you want them. So do they know that you exist? Do they know that you're looking to grow? Do they know that you're looking to, that you would possibly open up your doors to them? Like that's step one. I found most people that I coach and train these days that are trying to grow their team or trying to grow their brokerage, they've never even made any phone calls or efforts at all to the agents that they're actually targeting. So that's like step number one. But you have to do that in a way that's not like, hey, come join our team, come join our brokerage. We got the best splits, we got the best technology, we got the best culture. Because when you go after agents that way, they view you just like the people that text me every day about health insurance, or the realtor.com people calling me and trying to sell me a zip code of leads. Like I see them as just another salesperson. And so you've got to overcome that salesperson's skepticism. And so what I would do is two things. We had a Monday morning mastermind. We still have it every Monday morning these days. We had a Monday morning mastermind that was at a location that was not in our office.
Mm-hmm.
We went and rented a community center every Monday morning, and that meeting was for our agents. It was our weekly sales meeting. We asked everybody to please, if there's any way possible, please make it to that meeting. And we would just simply ask agents from other brokerages to come sit in the room.
Kind of like an open sales meeting slash recruiting effort.
That's right. And
Yeah.
it was not a dog and pony show. We were not doing it to like impress them. It really was for our people. But what better way for an agent to see what kind of culture they might be walking into than for them to be able to take it for a test drive?
Yeah. That's good.
Coach
Yeah.
Michael Burt calls it tasting the ice cream, right? You ever had one of those little taste testers where you get to taste the ice cream before you buy the whole carton? That concept is very, very powerful in recruiting. We weren't even going over splits and fees. We weren't going over, any of that stuff that other people try to recruit on. It really was, in this field guy, can he get me to the next level? And what would happen was, number one, like, they're not going to walk into your sales meeting like that if they're fully satisfied where they're at already. They're coming into that meeting because they're not getting something that their current company or their current team leader is not giving them. So you already have a huge advantage just by them showing up to your meeting. And then if you give good training, then that becomes very, very easy. And what I found was, over and over and over, I had agents from other companies come and they were like, man, I thought I was getting good training where I was at before. And that's how they sold me to go there. But once I came over here, I realized like our stuff at First Class was just at another level. So, I think that's something that as a team leader, you should be trying to figure out. If you're not that person, maybe find somebody out there who is. Bring them in, make them part of your team, and let them run that weekly meeting for you. So that was like number one.
Can I ask a question before you go to number two?
Sure.
That is an awesome idea. It's like the fact that they show up, there's curiosity, and you're like trying to see if you can get them hooked. And then they're going to say something like, man, I thought I was getting this and I'm really not. You blew me away. I want to be a part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, how long have you been doing that, or did you do that? And what did the numbers look like? Were you recruiting like 10 agents a week doing that approach, or like, do you have the data on that?
So we're in a kind of a small market here where I'm located. There's only like 700 real estate agents in our MLS.
Okay.
So for us, 3 to 5 agents a month was what we were typically recruiting through doing that.
That's pretty good.
And it was about I'd say about 70% of the agents who showed up to one of our trainings would join our bro. Now they might not join right then, but they might, they might come to the meeting today, and 10 weeks from today finally make that decision that, like, I'm just not getting what I need. I've tried to let my team give me more. I've mentioned it to my broker that I need a little bit more training. But
Right.
I remember that one time I went to Phil's, weekly meeting. It was amazing. I couldn't imagine sitting in that every week. So I would say that's a pretty high way of doing it. But you don't want to be. I guess you don't want to have too many guests showing up to those meetings, or else your agents might start feeling like that you're just doing that to recruit other people when you should be using that meeting to help the people you've got and to kind of re-recruit them on why they joined you as well.
Yeah. Good point.
But if somebody came to the meeting and we typically went from like 9:30 to 11 a.m. If they came to the meeting and like the meeting ended at 11 and they were like, boom, like out the door, hey, I'm probably not going to chase that person down. But a lot of times they would come and they liked the energy in the room. The room was packed.
Right.
They liked the energy. They liked the engagement. They liked what other agents in the room had to say, because it was very interactive. It wasn't me standing up there for 90 minutes and talking. It was very interactive. If we had somebody that came to the meeting and they stuck around for a few minutes after the meeting, it was almost like this is game over. This person's about to join my
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, hey, like, you got a few minutes? I'm about to ride back to the office. I'd love to meet with you one on one and see what you thought about the meeting and kind of go a little bit further on, what things would look like if you did decide to at one point, down the road, come to first class real estate. And it very, 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 very rarely did splits or fees or any of that stuff come up at all. It usually was like the last thing that they wanted to know about, because we didn't recruit people based on splits and fees and what our cap amount was and all that kind of stuff. It was like, if you want the very best training, if you want very clear systems and processes to follow, this is the place for you.
Yeah.
If you're
Did you?
just wanting the lowest, if you're wanting the best split possible, there might be others in town that are a better fit for that.
Right.
But 100% of zero is still zero.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Did you, out of curiosity, did your brokerage or your team that you're having people join provide leads and appointments, or just the training to kind of get their own leads and appointments? What was the breakdown there?
Yeah, about 60% of the closings we still have today are off sphere of influence. So we're very heavy on just teaching them how to go out and find their own leads. We did have we've got about 35 lead sources that we use that are all like referral based type services. You might get a lead this week, you might not. So I would say you've got to be careful. Like with us being in a small market, we didn't have Zillow Flex.
Hmm.
We didn't have Veterans United, some of those bigger lead platforms out there. And so we made it very clear that when you join here, you are going to get some of these leads. But if you're just depending on the leads that we give you, you're probably not going to hit your goals for the year.
So it was expected that they also did their own lead gen and they knew that going in.
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually provided them a 30-day action plan of exactly what to do every day, their first 30 days. We're still using that thing today. It works in every market that I've ever opened up a location or coached somebody in. And it's just very simple things that even a part-time agent could get those tasks done every day for 30 days. And it's all about like, if I had to go out and get a listing, like I haven't been making phone calls to buyers and sellers for years at this point. But if I had to go, like if you gave me a whole week to go out and get one listing, I would call people that I already know. You know, I
Yep.
wouldn't call strangers. I maybe would try some for sale by owners, but the fastest, easiest way for an agent to have success and pick up a quick closing is going to be somebody in their sphere of influence. So we just came up with a system of this is how you go out and get your sphere of influence to do business with you.
Yeah.
And the agents we have that are crushing at the highest levels have taken that system, and some of them have even gone, bigger and better than that. Some of them do like parties, tailgate parties, block parties for the neighborhood, home welcoming parties. When they sell a house or something like that, garage sales, all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
so that's really how we built the whole business. Was like no lead source we have is going to be enough for you to survive. It might be some extra money. It might help you pay your MLS dues. It might help you pay your taxes, but it's probably not going to be enough for you to really make the kind of money that you probably are going to need to make to stay in this business long term. But again, like what I learned from the first go around in real estate was I got to learn how to generate leads. And if I can learn how to generate leads, I can have a long, long, long career
Yeah. Right.
in this industry. So if I'm just giving you leads and you're just having to pick up the phone and do a live connect real quick, am I really teaching you what you need to really? So I would just say to team leaders out there that run that kind of model, you just have to be careful. Some of the ones I know, they recruit agents based on leads, and the agents come and they work those leads, and when those leads don't work out, they're off to the next place that's offering leads as well. So if you recruit based on leads, you might also lose people based on leads as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We actually started recruiting based on leads and appointments. We would literally set appointments, show our calendar and be like, look, our calendar from like the last 2 weeks, we can't do this anymore. Do you want appointments put on? And then we slowly began to realize that there came a point where they got so many leads and appointments just given to them that they're like complacent with not signing one because they knew they would get 10 the next week, or however many appointments the next week. So you do got to be really, really careful about that and have it be supplemental to whatever they're doing as their own primary private one, lead source generator.
Yeah, and you've got to, if you're going to give leads like that, somebody has to be the leads manager. Like somebody has to be the one pausing them. Somebody has to be the one like coaching them. Like, hey, you had 3 appointments this week, but none of them signed with you. Like, we need to pause the leads, and you can kind of sometimes end up looking like the bad guy when you do that to an agent. So we still do that today, but we don't do that as much with our new hires. We do that with people that came in, followed the 30-day action plan, and like they're going to make it in this industry. We'll add the leads on to them later on. It's kind of the
Yeah.
way we transition it now.
Okay, cool. So that's a lot of people in your brokerage or your team. I'm not sure if those are interchangeable or not, if there's like a, the field team or the brokerage and all these independents, but a lot of people to kind of manage and track, especially if they were on your team. Can you talk a little bit about how, not you, because I know you're not in the sales or management role anymore, but like how did the people that are running your team today manage that and keep track of everyone and hold people accountable?
Yeah, a great question. One of the things that I realized early on was I was bringing in a bunch of new agents. When I say new, I'm just new to our company. Like that,
Hmm.
not all of them were brand new agents, but we were bringing on agents, 3 to 5 a month, pretty consistently. And as I was bringing those on, because I was the one that brought them on, I was also the one getting a lot of the phone calls when they were experiencing things in the field, like, "Hey, I got a contract. What do I do next?"
Yeah.
So you can end up kind of getting bogged down. It's kind of like when you have like 4 or 5 deals pending, you can get bogged down by
Yeah.
dealing with those 4 or 5 pendings, and you end up with a zero next month, like we talked about already.
Hmm.
Well, I realized early on, like I needed some help. Like my highest and best use of my time was not showing them how to put a listing in the MLS. Like I could do it with my eyes closed. I knew how to do it, but it was not the highest and best use of my time. So what we started doing, we have a 70-30 model, and then we have a 100% model based on where they're at in their business cycle. We started like trying to notice who were our best 70-30 agents on that model. And a lot of agents today are looking for ways to make passive income, whether it's building a downline or stock options or all that kind of stuff. We created our own internal passive plan called 5% for life. And so what we would do is we would take our best 70-30 agents, the ones that we felt like these people are going to make it. They are great examples of what our culture is. They're showing up to the trainings. They're doing what we want agents to do. They're a great representation of our culture. And when we would hire agents on, we would pair them up with one of those agents.
Like a mentor relationship.
Yeah, we called it the advisor. We called them advisors, but yeah, basically a mentor. And that mentor was responsible for being the first point of contact for that new hire until that new hire had closed 2 transactions. Because once they closed 2 or 3 transactions, like, they kind of understood where to go to enter their contract. They understood kind of how the checklist worked for our contract to close checklist. But they needed somebody to show them, and it was not a good use of my time to pause what I was doing to do that. And so what we did was, instead of it being a 70-30 split, it was 70% to the agent, 25% to my company, and then we gave 5% to that agent for being their mentor. And even though they were only doing it for the first 2 or 3 closings, as long as both of those agents stayed with us, then they still kept getting that 5% referral fee as long as both agents stayed with us. So it became a great retention plan. An agent that's making, $1,000 a month in passive income, they leave our company and they go somewhere else. They don't keep getting that. So it really was a great way. It solved a few problems for us. It solved the problem of we want to keep bringing on new people, but Phil can't handle them all. It solved a problem, and these people were eventually going to hopefully go to that 100% model and open up their own team and maybe grow their team big enough that it becomes another location. That kind of became our training program for those people, the future team leaders. And then for retention, like it didn't matter what the other brokerages in town were calling and offering to my people. They weren't walking away from $1,000 a month
Yeah.
passive. Like they helped somebody, a year ago, and they're still getting a 5% referral fee every time that agent has a closing, and they're not even involved with helping them anymore at this point.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was a great program for that. And it's something that I recommend to almost anybody out there who's running that model. Again, your job is to not have a job eventually. And that's a great way for you to get out of taking those quick phone calls. A 5-minute phone call here, while you got other stuff going on and other things going on. If you're the one taking all the phone calls and an agent can't get in touch with you, they feel like you're too busy. Like
Yeah.
my team, my leader's too busy. He can't even call me back. That can be a problem for you. And then for you as the leader, is that really the highest and best use of your time? And you got to be developing people,
Mhm.
and so that program really solved a lot of that for us. So yeah, that's basically how we did it and how we're still doing it today.
That's amazing. So Phil, you dropped a lot of really awesome like lessons learned on us today. I'm sure a lot of people were or are in your shoes today. But if someone wants to kind of continue the conversation with you around what we just talked about, literally growing a team from you to 160 plus agents across 6 states, I think, or 6 offices. Um, yeah. How would one get in touch with you to kind of see if you might be a good fit?
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate you letting me plug this.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I do a free training call every Thursday. It's open to anybody. I have a lot of people that I have on those calls are in real estate, but I'm getting more and more people from other industries as well as I'm going out and speaking and doing podcasts and that kind of stuff. So anybody that wants to can hop on a Zoom call with me every Thursday. The link for that is in my bio on my Facebook profile, my personal Facebook profile, and those are free. Those are there's usually a topic that we go over for about 20 or 30 minutes, and there's 20 or 30 minutes of just Q&A on that. And then I do have a couple coaching programs, depending on where you're at in your business cycle. Some people genuinely just need help with the sales and marketing side of it. They need to build up their customer base before they can hire anybody. So I've got a program for that. I've got a program for folks that are wanting to just get out of the production side of it, which really was a catalyst to me doing all this other stuff that I'm doing today when I was no longer out there selling houses anymore and I could just focus on my business. That was a game changer. So I've got a program for those kind of folks. And then, if you're wanting to get out of the day to day management, you want to do multiple locations, multiple states, multiple industries. I've got a program for that as well called the CEO Academy. And then my book should be out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's finished. I've never had one published before, so I don't really know what the process is or what the holdup is. It's done. It's written.
Cool.
It's just waiting to be printed and on Amazon and all that kind of stuff. But the book is out there, and it kind of tells the story of what I learned along the way, things I wish I would learn. And that book is called Unstuck.
Stuff.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Unstuck. Run the business. Don't let the business run you. That's the full title.
I love it. So we will also include. I'm gonna have to get some links for everything that you just mentioned, and we can put that in the description of this episode as well. But Phil, thank you so much for your time. I learned a whole lot, dropped a lot of really awesome knowledge, and like I told you at the beginning, I think the idea here on Team Lead Talks is that one person can pick up on one thing that can change their life, their business, and make it better for them. That's what we're really looking for. But you dropped a lot of different golden nuggets here. So appreciate you being on here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for what you're doing for the industry. You sit on podcasts, you go to events, and that one thing might be $100,000 idea or more. So yeah, I appreciate you doing this and doing what you do for our industry because we definitely need you know new ideas, fresh ideas, different perspectives, and I appreciate what you bring to the industry as a whole as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Well, take care and we will chat soon.
Thanks, man.
All
Enjoyed
right.
it.